We see and hear countless stories, but only a few move us to actually stop and reflect. In the rush of our everyday lives, we are always thinking about what's the next thing. But today's guest invites us to pause and pay attention to what's quietly disappearing around us. Sumesh Lekhi doesn't just inform, but he awakens. Through his lens, wildlife and nature aren't distant, but they are immediate and deeply human. So, watch ahead through this episode to see how he uses his craft of writing, direction, and cinematography at Brave Age Films to bring sensitization to the natural world. Hi, Sumesh. How's it going?
Very well, Rahel. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on once again.
My
And
pleasure. My
looking
pleasure.
forward. Yeah. So I just wanted to start with, like, for listeners who don't like Brave Age Films all about, what does it stand for, and like, what's your day to day? Like, what does that entail?
So our company Bravest Films was created about 10 years back. So we made a film on elephants at Kaziranga. That was about the elephant conflict which took place there. You know, with elephants coming into fields and raiding crops. And so then when it came to creating a film company, I thought Bravest Films was very pertinent because I was also, I'm still involved in environmental work, conservation work in Bombay. And I somehow felt that the way development and the way the world is going so fast, at least the younger generation, which includes y'all and generations before y'all, after y'all, would definitely have to be more braver to be able to get out of the mold of how generally they think or how society wants them to think, at least as far as the environment is concerned or other sensitive topics are concerned. And they'll have to be brave and they'll have to come out and, showcase their own individuality. So we thought that was a good name for a film, especially with the amount of data you get, for example, social media. And so the younger generation is definitely inclined to follow a mold at times or a way of thinking. So they'll definitely have to have go inward and come out with the thought process. And I thought our company should have a name which would reflect that for this particular age or generation. That is how it came up, the name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me like a few examples or like what you saw that's happening like around you with the youngsters, how they are thinking that, like prompted you to do this.
Oh, see, when staying in Bombay, at least I there are a few people who are very sensitive to the environment, but I definitely thought, for example, we've got mangroves and wetlands
Hmm.
right in a lot of areas in Bombay, Lokanwala, Oshiwa, Versova, Malad, all over. But people really were not really aware that these are beneficial for us. So it was more like khadi hai, machhar hai.
Hmm.
Awareness was not there. The status quo of whatever they were told, कि these are all degraded areas, khadi hai, they must go. So there I thought the awareness was not there with the younger generation. And if they went out more, because with our film Bastion of the Giants, the first one, we've gone to schools, we've done about 7,000 students across Bangalore, Bombay. So I realized that it is very important to get the message out to the younger generation. And that's when I realized that filmmaking is a great medium, especially if a story is told in such a way which sensitizes people, sensitizes authorities, even politicians, the people, especially local people, and also people at a larger scale. That was the whole thought process that time, getting into making films. And my first film in West Bengal, Elephants, I mean, we were still staying in a very cushy city like Bombay. I mean, all the comforts are there. And we have a nightlife here which is very different. But when
Hmm.
I went to West Bengal to shoot, and I realized that every evening elephants were coming into people's fields, and there was conflict happening, and there were people screaming, elephants were going after them, gunshots were being fired to drive the elephants out. The forest department had to come in, and this was almost an everyday feature in areas which have wildlife populations. So that at that point prompted me that I must make a film which tells people that there's a world beyond where we come from. There is a world out there. Elephants also at that time, there was an impression, especially in areas which were closer to wildlife areas where maybe wildlife is a menace, wildlife is not required. And then the film also dwelled. in topics about how we have encroached wild spaces. Like even in the urban area, if you look at Lokhandwa, a lot of areas we all people stay in, we've encroached wild spaces. Bombay was an island, 7 islands. Reclamation was done.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of biodiversity. So and so with the first film when we released it, we realized we had screenings at Kala Ghoda in India. Internationally, we had screenings in the US all across. So we realized that people were really taking interest and they were getting sensitized. The message was going out there. So it was definitely a good medium to go with. And that's how the process of making films started.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like even looking at my own life, there's firstly living in Mumbai, like obviously like you're busy, there's not a lot of time, to think about these things. But even like when you think about it, there aren't, with all these like billboards and stuff, you aren't pushed towards this type of content. So it's amazing that's something you're pushing. And also, could you just tell the audience a little bit about your role in Brave Age Films and what you do?
Yeah, I see. When I was very keen to hire a crew with a cinematographer, and that's how we would shoot. But then the elephant, at least filming elephants, where you could be surrounded with 60 to 70 elephants at one time, required a very run and gun kind of filming. So at that point, I did approach a couple of DOPs and cinematographers. But in about 2013, at least in Bombay, it was more of a Bollywood scene. So then I
Hmm.
decided to helm the camera myself, and I got very technically inclined. I am technically very inclined, so getting into all the aspects of filming. So that so two roles happen simultaneously. One is of being the cinematographer on my films, and also writing for my films, because being a lawyer, a lot of I used to keep penning my thoughts. But what do
Hmm.
I say? Even when I'm shooting, if I came across a situation, I would pen those thoughts. I would research deeper. Like currently, I have, if you look at even a script, Word document, it probably has about 100,000 words in it. Even if the script is only 6,000 words. A lot of research
Hmm.
goes into it. So that was a parallel role I played. Then I got my team of editors. I had a couple of editors I'm talking about initially. And while they were editing, that's also when I realized a lot of my story was being made on the editing table because I was observing things. At that time, it was elephants, now it's tigers also. Then I realized that I'll have to helm the editing. Though I may have edit operators or assistants, I'll have to helm it and sit on the editing table. And that's how I begin to enjoy the role of a cinematographer, editor, and writer in all our films. So that's how it started. And definitely, the role also of consolidation comes in. I won't say clearly like a producer, but of consolidation. Like even when you're filming, I may get 80-90% of the shots I want for the film, but there could be
Hmm.
times when you want people cinematographers, or you want photographers to film for you, or they have something very interesting which can give value to our film, so then we involve them also. So that's also one role where you can say a DOP. That's what the DOP does. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I
That
just
is
want
the
to,
technical,
yeah.
yeah, technical role. And because we were already doing conservation work in Lokhandwala, even 3-4 years before we released our first film, so that the outreach began happening there, coordinating with groups, coordinating with schools, coordinating environmental groups. So that was a very integral role, and it's still a very integral role. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke a little bit about, what pushed you towards these stories currently, but I want to just like shift your childhood for a bit. Like, like for me watching like, Shah Rukh Khan and stuff, and like I initially, dreamt of like either being in or like making these like big Bollywood like, movies.
Yeah.
Like there's a shift, like a sort of a shift for you. So could you like think back to any like moment or like any just memory that shifted you in the direction of nature and wildlife instead of what like I guess the masses think of?
Okay. Uh, so my childhood, fortunately, I stayed in a large home with a bungalow. And my father, especially, was at that point instrumental in my love for wildlife because my grandmother would tell me my bedtime stories would be Hathi ne elephant ne, Hathi ne ye kiya, Hathi ne wo kiya, because we were close to the Nilgiris. So Nilgiris
Hmm.
had a lot of elephants, a lot of wildlife. So that became a very important part of my visualization. And fortunately, because I preferred bunking school, so I could do my gardening and look after my pets. So
Yeah.
my days were very often the last part of my days were filled within nature, with nature, with my pets, with gardening, and so that became the formative years. Plus the formative years, and because I was in the Nilgiris, I was exposed to a lot of wildlife. I even in my school I had a pet snake. Now I know it's a shield tail. That time we called it a grass snake, which I used to
Hmm.
keep in the chalk box on my desk. So I was always exposed to nature. So that itself became, you can say, as you say, hero. So there was
Hmm.
not when it comes to movies, we enjoyed James Bond and
Yeah.
whatever the generation had, we enjoyed, those kind of films. In college, it became mostly Hollywood, mostly. But that was wildlife point of view. Nature was more because of where I stayed, the way I grew up. That was an important aspect of it. And then when I'm a chartered accountant and lawyer. But let's say when you got time and you sat on a Saturday or a Sunday and you watched a documentary on tigers, on wildlife, it deeply affected me that there is so much happening. At that point, tiger population is going down a lot. It is
Yeah.
always a situation, yeah. And even wildlife was not. I mean, if you would just probably even there was no organized wildlife, you can say. You drove through Mudumalai or Bandipur or even Tadoba, you could go and camp by the lake. So it was not. So, so at that point, I would have that right word is sinking feeling when I came across something in the environment or the conservation which was sliding downwards. So it was not a fixed idea that time I'll make films. It was just a sinking feeling. And around 2000, the turning point definitely came when I went to Bengal. Bengal was just supposed to be West Bengal, a holiday. It was supposed to be, I won't say a holiday, but it was to experience, raw nature. And that's when I was drawn in because I was closely associated with the forest department then. Very close friend's father was the field director. So then we would go into the excursions at night and drive the elephants back. Then became more solid. I think this should be made into a film.
About You just spoke about like a bunch of stuff, like, you're a
Uh,
CA, you're a lawyer, and even in Brave
yeah.
Age, you're like a cinematographer, a writer, and like obviously, like a bunch of roles seems a bit overwhelming to me. Plus, like, you
Uh-huh.
know, like looking like externally, like at these roles, like not much of a relation between a lawyer and a cinematographer, stuff like that. So,
Yes.
can you just tell me a little bit of your learning process for, these like variety of roles?
See, I started working when I was 16.
Hmm.
As soon as I came from Nilgiris to Bombay, I immediately got, I mean, even in college hours, I would go for 3, 4 hours to office because my maternal family is family of lawyers. So
Yeah.
I used to go to the office for 3, 4 hours. So there I found in a way a calling to understand legal concepts, how to put it across, how to draft at a very young age. I have done about, I think, 7 or maybe 8, 9 jobs, different jobs before it's I became a chartered accountant itself. So, and those jobs went from law to accountancy to business marketing, you know, different aspects, business,
Hmm.
even manufacturing, even manufacturing. I was with, interning with somebody for manufacturing. And at that time, because I had a flair for creativity, I would even draw for them. It was not formative that time that I'll do my CA or my law, but I would do all these things. So all these roles, I think somewhere, I think it's very important for young people. Uh, if I can add this in this conversation, very often,
Yeah.
the youngsters, what I see, they have a concept in their mind. Okay, we'll do this, we'll become big, we'll have a X amount crore turnover. It's a concept in the mind.
Yeah.
But to
Hmm.
me, uh, because my circumstances were such, I could not only idolize, I had to step out. I had to step into jobs, into, kind of learning entrepreneurship from that particular stage. So I think it's very important from a young age, 16, 17, to at least start doing, if not 3, 4 hours a day, at least do summer camps and, with summer internships with people, or even try to go 3, 4 hours if you have college. And fortunately, I went to a college. I went to Sydenham College, and all of us, my classmates, amazing, and we were always see, because we were in commerce, the pressure was not so much to really
Yeah.
study. So we did a lot of extracurricular activities in college itself, and a bunch of my whole batch, in fact, is quite a lot of entrepreneurs and finance consultants, and so I think that journey itself. So by the time I was 21, 22, I had already seen a lot in the market itself. Traveling in the local train, taking a bus. Even from Lokhandwala, we had to walk to the bus stop. From there, take a bus. From there, take a train to Churchgate. So a lot of experience. Your mind gets used to thinking and working on the move. That's a very important
Hmm.
step. Then when I did my CA, actually, frankly, I don't think I studied to become a chartered accountant because of my experience.
Yeah.
Because of my experience, I was able to crack the exam in the first attempt itself, both my inter and my final. And law just happened, by the way, because in the CA curriculum itself, you're doing about 13 different laws. So even general law, that also happened along with it. Now, connecting it to wildlife, your question. So it's my experience, when the mind gets a discipline, whether you are training to be a doctor or an engineer or anything. I'm not saying even formal education. It could be researched. Maybe somebody's into coding, somebody's into AI, but they're really a lot of research based thinking is happening where you take a lot of data and you collate it into a small. So basically, like for example, chartered accountancy or law, there's so much data out there. CA, they go the whole year
Yeah.
accounts, and then you bring it all into one balance sheet and one profit and loss account through a trial balance. So the filming process is very similar. You get a lot of data. You're almost shooting 1,000 to 1,500 hours of wildlife footage, and then you're bringing into one eye. You're bringing it in. So that discipline, I would say, came in from that whole journey of that many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about the balance between, all these roles? Obviously, like now you've been doing it for a while and now you've got
Mm.
accustomed to it. But in the
Right.
start, like was there a process to it, like prioritization? How did that work
You mean wildlife filming?
with all your roles combined?
Yeah, yeah. So as once Bastion of the Giants released,
Hmm.
um, then I became almost 80% of my time went into wildlife filmmaking only. Earlier, at least, I was involved with non-conservation work,
Hmm.
earning money, your means of earning money, and everything. So a lot of time began going there because by then you are connecting with your distributors and you're planning your next schedules, what other stories you will present. So I would say by 2014, 15, by 14, I was completely almost 100% into wildlife filmmaking. And even my professional work, we did do some environmental cases. We would, help NGOs, or, I've done drafting also. In Mumbai, I've fought in the High Court also. We've drafted petitions. We've worked along with the lawyers and all. So this became more of a pro bono role for my
Hmm.
own self, my education, for people around me, my friends, anybody who reached out to me. A lot of people from the film industry, because we are linked to the film industry, have reached out for their legal matters and for their accounting matters, and because that's no longer a line I earn from, so that continues, but that is more of just to help people out. And
Okay.
currently, wildlife has become the whole process, apart from what conservation work we still do. And my so yeah.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
Like obviously, as you said, it's not like your like primary source of income, and that takes like pressure off.
Hmm.
But like how would you like say people are like for me, obviously it's not the same, but I'm studying, I'm working. There are many people out there handling many things. Was there ever a time you were like overwhelmed, or you couldn't like balance many things? What kind of advice or what kind of process would you like, talk to them about?
See, I can, if you're talking about someone your age, for example, I think wildlife and filmmaking and conservation can be a lot of fun also. But there are two aspects to it. Like whenever I have taken assistance on my shoots, very often I ask them to retain, at least in our case, because I was the primary cinematographer, I could give my full time. I would tell them to retain what or other filming work they're doing. They're cinematographers themselves, whether
Hmm.
they were doing wedding shoots or they're doing, regular television serials they're shooting or whatever. I would ask them to continue doing what they were doing. So that is one thing I think that that's one thing one can do is do it part time. If somebody wants to do it full time, if you want to go into wildlife, then definitely you must intern with a wildlife filmmaker. But understand
Hmm.
that it's a long journey. It's a journey which comes out of passion. If you like wildlife, if you like filming wildlife, if you like being with animals, you want to shoot in 50 degrees one day and then shoot in minus one day. If you're used to all those things, you're used to uh, traveling tough terrains and maybe having 15 hours a day. That's 16. I think I'm under maybe 16 to 17, 18 hours a day of work when you're shooting, that is outside on field. If all these things excite you, then definitely wildlife is a way to go. So one way of doing it is to intern with a wildlife filmmaker. But I think a more practical way of doing things is probably even joining one of the production companies. Whether in India, like even the UK is very popular. If you can tie up with Bristol has got a lot of wildlife work happening. You can tie up with a company in the UK, do an internship with them. If you're really dedicated to reach there and to do that, that is one way of doing it. But I am seeing a third way of doing it, which is very promising and is pretty exciting, is to become an influencer in wildlife itself. Where you uh, go along with like-minded people or take like-minded people along with you on wildlife trips, and have a good time. You have social media has become a great line of work. In fact, maybe it's a simpler and faster way of doing this line of work, where you influence, you take people on trips, you put up stuff, pertinent messages also along. So I think that's a quicker way of doing things because traditional wildlife filmmaking is very tedious. Like if I shoot for about a month, I'm editing for almost a year after that. So that, and it takes a lot of time. Like, as I told you, a 5,000 script has got 95,000 words of research in my, you know, in the Word document itself. Yeah, so that the traditional is much more difficult, and so I think this new age way of being an influencer is a good way of doing it. Does that answer your question in a way?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you mentioned something super interesting. I
Hmm.
didn't even think about that. That, like with these assistants and stuff you work with, like they need to be good at, like working and living in the wild and stuff out there. So, like, is there any other, like, such like secondary criteria you look for? Like, obviously, you can be a good cinematographer, but when you're in this field, you need to be good at stuff like that too. Like, what all do you like look at when working with people?
For assistant,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, I
like
think
an intern or something like that.
I would say, see, first of all, you have to do a lot of field craft and homework before you come on the field, because that is something there cannot be a casual approach here. You can have fun, but when you are, it's like lights, camera, action. Like an actor immediately lights up, and he performs at that time because how many takes can you take nowadays? Maybe you take takes. So in wildlife filmmaking, the actor is literally behind the camera. So as soon as the wild tiger appears, you have to be completely ready to take that shot, the composition, the way the panning of this. Like first of all, technical skills are extremely important, very very important. Lighting is very important. How to do videography is very important. One more thing which I have seen is that mental and physical stamina are very important if you are into wildlife filmmaking because when we are on the field, a typical day starts at about 4 o'clock in the morning and your assistant, you're looking at all the gears are fine, your cameras are good, your batteries are charged, your SD cards or your memory cards are there, SD, whatever you use, CFX cards, all that is in place. So you're completely set. All your gear, your gimbals, whatever else you're carrying is all set. Then you're going on to the Jeep, into the safari vehicle, and you're there for sometimes when you do full day, you're there from 6 in the morning to almost 6:30 in the evening, 5:30 in the morning. That's 12 hours. And we've had situations. So this and it's very tough. We've shot in 48 degrees plus, maybe with the how you got a wind chill factor, you got a wind heat factor also. So the assistant should be able to handle that. And you are also working with a team which is on site. So how to
Hmm.
get along with them, how to coordinate with them. That's a very important aspect because I also see people from urban shooting environments. They find it. They need to be able to adapt to working with local crew also, with your naturalists, with your guides. Getting along with them, asking them the right questions. So while you're shooting, and sometimes they also take on a role where they need to handle, let's say, a B camera or a C camera, how that shot has to be taken, what are the
Hmm.
angles. Yeah. But I've had issues a couple of times where the assistants have not had the stamina and they've come back and they've been quite tired. Let me put it that way, exhausted for almost a couple of weeks. But then I've had a couple of them who really bounced back. They've shaved they've shaved their hair off. The next schedule, I wonder, and they're like coming in army boots and fatigues, and like they realize that's the kind of rigor which is required. So, but good people who've done that have themselves done well. They become filmmakers. They've got awards in their own movies now. They've done well. It's an important learning. Yeah. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
way I do it. It could be an easier, a simpler path which can be done. That's the way I do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't even think of all of this before. And I
Mhm.
just wanna, go back to another thing you had said earlier, where,
Mhm.
you went to these schools to, showcase your films and all of that. Like, so I wanna talk about like, like youngsters and attention, so
Mhm.
films are obviously about attention and uh,
Yeah.
like how you get attention is changing through social media, through trends. So is that something you think about back of your mind when you're either like working on your films or promoting your films, like how do I get the attention of these youngsters through trends, or is it just fully purpose based, story based, and you stick to that?
I think I'm still pretty old school, not because of my age, but generally,
Hmm.
because I think the technical requirement is so much that
Hmm.
I get pretty, I would say I get lost in the filming, the post production, the script writing. But yeah, we need to reach out to understand the trends. And so we are on social, I'm on social media. So you understand what's happening, what people are doing, what people are posting, you know. But I essentially don't get time to do it myself. I should be doing it more often, as per the. But yeah, we just a lot of my posts are more to do with conservation issues we're involved with, you know. And sometimes if we get some good shots you want to discuss with people, then we post those shots. And yeah, when it comes to writing our script, when it comes to the trends, at least because we are completely into broadcast, right? Our films go into television channels. So there,
Hmm.
during our travel, or we go for trade fairs, or then we meet our distributors who are again very much in the industry, who kind of know the trend. So even if I'm lost, I write a lot of technical stuff in my script, so that the third process is to make it sound cooler and simpler for people, to get the legal language out of it, to make it
Hmm.
smaller, shorter sentences which the narrator can say. And then the
Yeah.
fourth aspect, which comes once we have locked the whole script, is then we bounce it off with our broadcasters or with distributors, and then they give their feedback if they feel a particular trend is going on, or let's say, for example, at one time there were two things which were very popular. One was to have a lot of interviews in the film at one time,
Hmm.
and the second was people jumping into the frame and a narrator actually being in the frame, presenting the show, a presenter. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now I see a lot of purely wildlife content out there, at least for broadcast, because presenter-based programs are anyway happening on social media. A lot of podcasters are there. A lot of YouTubers, they anyway doing that. So I'm seeing a lot of traditional wildlife. So in whatever projects we are working on now, we are making it purely wildlife, because I want to do it that way. That's my thought
Yeah.
process. Yeah, and also, in additional to your question on, is that I we make the film for it to tell the story as it is.
Hmm.
It has to. So if you're following a tiger, you will generally see 99% of the footages of that particular tiger itself.
Hmm.
We try our best to follow a story, be true to what we're trying to say. That becomes a lot of effort,
Hmm.
to get those shots in and to make it very authentic, the whole experience.
Hmm.
That takes a lot of time. So yeah, so that's important. And then we also look at what strategy works for the broadcast. So that's more important for us at this when we are doing technical work.
Right. I also want to touch on, like, is there any, like, creative conflict on how the story is firstly told and then distributed? There are so many stakeholders, as you mentioned, like there are distributors, producers, so many stakeholders. So is there ever any creative conflict, and how does that, get resolved?
A lot, a lot. That is the aspect. So what we do is we make films in two levels. One is
Hmm.
like we've been, if it is commissioned, then we try our best to stick with the strategy of the commissioner, which is the
Hmm.
distributor or the broadcaster. If it is commissioned, then there's definitely a strategy. There's a timeline in place, where you got to uh, give what you got to present the film the way they think will work for their channel.
Hmm.
But 60% or 70%, I would say almost 75% of my work is what I do independently. So I take
Okay.
my own time. Like there is a project I'm working from 2016, and I've just about completed it now. I'm finally satisfied. Yeah, I've got the shots and I've got the stories in. So these films, in a sense, we do it at our own pace. So there's no conflict, at least during the filming and the editing and the post production, the writing phase.
Hmm.
But once it is completed, then we show it to that much open mind as a creative I keep as a creative
Okay.
person, that then we show it to our, as I said, distributors, and then they give us feedback. I
Hmm.
think this will work, or maybe some human elements could be added or removed for that particular strategy of what's going on that time. Or maybe transition styles have changed. Transition, how you transition between shots. It could be a fade out, fade in, or it could be a superimposition transition. Like what was going on trend. Like, or then you need some, like earlier, it was very trendy to put flash sounds in a movie, flash
Hmm.
footage and sounds, whoosh and whatever. But now the trend is it's more of a clean cut. So if I've taken time to work on the project on my own, where I write the script and I do we get the post production done. Then once it is done, okay, this is what we are presenting. This is the way we want to present it. Then we are completely open to suggestions from our broadcast partners.
Right. Makes sense. And I also want to, talk about the goals of your films and like how you prioritize these goals. Obviously, you know, like if I worked on something for like around 9 years, I would be super attached to it. So what do you like when you put this stuff out? What do you prioritize? Like if somebody told you, like if a young person told you, like, oh, I learned so much, or is it the amount of eyeballs you get? Like, what are the goals when you put this stuff out?
See, first of all, an important goal, which is that at the local level, it has to make an impact.
Hmm.
Whatever we as an audience take home, but ultimately, for people who live around the Tiger Reserve, who have a stake in it, it has to make an impact in their lives. For example, when we made Bastion of the Giants,
Hmm.
that was again about conflict and all that. So then I did go to the parliament in Delhi. I met with the environment minister. I met with the top forest officials of the country, the top three, four, who were looking into Project Tiger, Project Elephant at that time. And so then we made our film available to all the elephant ranges across India. Yeah,
Hmm.
because there were topics in the movie which sensitized about how to work, how to deal with conflict. So that's one which is a macro approach where you the film can be used to work with the authorities. For example, even
Hmm.
a film in Mumbai on the wetlands has been, we've worked very closely with the authorities for conservation.
Hmm. Yeah.
Very often, the authorities um, are inclined to work with individuals or groups which help them further the cause of conservation as long as we are doing it, the groups are doing it. So that's the second aspect of our film where we can utilize our film to send a message and actual conservation happens on the ground. Like if you see Lokanwala, Oshiwara, these areas, certain areas have been protected, you know. So that's, and the third, which I look at, which is very important, for example, our film on Panna, it's
Hmm.
called Emerald Forest. So when we used to go in, there used to be between two to maybe six jeeps going in while we were
Yeah.
shooting. No doubt, it was a very pristine forest, very quiet. But at least after the film came out in the last 3, 4 years, I've got a lot of feedback from the local people and from the forest department that with the film coming out, a lot of awareness happened about Panna, you know, initial stages. Now, no doubt, Panna is very popular on its own in the last couple of years, but in the initial
Hmm.
stages, our film came out during the lockdown. So people during the lockdown, after the lockdown, especially went to Panna after seeing the film. And then they
Hmm.
discovered this gem of a forest. And now there are at least 30, 35, 40 jeeps going in. So you can imagine there's a 8 to 10 times boom in the tourism. So also what happens is that there is a lot of earning for the locals. They have a stake now in the tigers being healthy, the tigers being seen for the tourists. So they, that is a very important. The press has become involved in Panna also. I mean, I am in touch with the press and they call, you know, they get in touch about something. So the press also is involved. This tiger came out of the park. This tiger is injured. This tiger's got into a fight. This tiger can't be seen. So when there's so much buzz about species and wildlife, conservation becomes much more prioritized at a local level. The forest department definitely they are into conservation, they do it, and also at a political level, there is definitely a will. Okay, the locals are pushing for it. So that is my these are my three primary goals, and fourth, the audience. I mean, there's no doubt they are the pillars, you know,
Hmm.
for we make the film to sensitize them. So what I can do is I write and I make the film which is as true to what I have seen or what I have researched. So
Hmm.
that is very important to present it to the audience. Like, I can't comment on other wildlife films, but at least our films should show what is actually there. You know, who the tigers are, what are the interpersonal. You can sensationalize a story, but it has to be true to content. So we try our best. And then one very important aspect of our films is we bring the whole bios ecosystem into the film. It's not
Hmm.
only about tigers or elephants. It's about an elephant apple tree and the fruit, how the elephant eats it. How,
Oh.
you know, every our films have a lot of biodiversity in it. About deer, about symbiosis between deers and the environment, tigers, and everything about fig fruits, about insects, about wasps. Everything comes into our film. Scorpions. That gives a holistic picture. So when you go to a jungle, you can look at the flora, fauna, different species, and understand it's a whole ecosystem which has to survive. And definitely the tiger is an umbrella or a flagship species on top, or an elephant is where its range is there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned like it takes a bunch of research and while you're writing and stuff like this 10,000 word document. So when
Mm.
you were working on wetlands, did you ever like have a moment where you felt like, oh, I'm a part of, what I'm addressing? Like I'm also behind something that's, the issue. And is there like ever any, just like, can you talk a little bit about the self reflection you have on your own actions or people around you when you work on these films?
I think, fortunately, the people around me who are very, at least for wetlands, are very sensitive. A lot
Hmm.
of birders have come, so they are quite sensitized about the whole. And because we've been involved in the conservation movement in Bombay itself, so a lot of steps which were taken by the forest department or the government reflected our thought process. Like
Hmm.
even when we ultimately realized fencing had to be done in certain places, we made sure there was at least a feet or two below it for wildlife movement, for bird movement, for reptiles, for snakes, everything. So
Hmm.
so I don't say there's also when the plans to beautify basically means to concretize the area. boating can
Yeah.
start.
Hmm.
We kind of stopped all those things. We stopped debris dumping to a great extent, at
Hmm.
least when I was available on the ground. When I was
Hmm.
available, when I could reach the ground, we've stopped debris dumping. So I can say that there's been no conflict from my side because
Hmm.
we have wherever we expected conflict to happen, we intervened as activists, and we ensured if we thought
Okay.
people were coming and doing certain acts who they felt were beneficial for the environment. People do acts, you know.
Hmm.
Let's like I remember there was this proposal by one of a prominent newspapers. They had led a campaign where
Hmm.
youngsters from a college they had come down, and the idea was to introduce water hyacinth into
Hmm.
water
Hmm.
bodies, and also to cut trees along the periphery of water bodies.
And you spoke about the the macro approaches you take when you get in touch with authorities and stuff like that. But can
Hmm.
you talk a little bit about at a micro level, like say what I can do and what my role should be?
We will see a lot of groups in social media, online, spreading awareness.
Hmm.
So you could sensitize, you could share more, you could comment, you could give them support. That is A, what I feel. B, people can directly jump into it. Like I have already mentored about 2, 3 people in the last year itself. And then I've,
Hmm.
spoken about getting them internship with top lawyers, environmental lawyers. So they've gone into that line of work where they can, contribute in some way to the environment, to conservation. And also in our daily life, it's a offset thing, about keeping the area clean and using biodegradable stuff and saving water. That's offset. That's very, very
Hmm.
important. But very important is to get involved in causes. If you see, I
Hmm.
remember, Lokamwala, Oshiwara, when we used to have our morchas we've had,
Hmm.
Munsi morchas, and the amount of people who came out, prominent citizens, because Lokamwala, Oshiwara have some of the most prominent and vocal citizens of Mumbai, vocal,
Hmm.
willing to step out of the domain of their work. So very often, uh, we sometimes get too involved in our own lives. That's why, again, coming back to Brave Age, the title of our film, we
Hmm.
get very involved. You have to be very brave to get out of your uh, own comfort zone, whether it is earning money, or it is a routine, or it is partying, or whatever it is. In little ways, I'm not saying in a lot of ways, in little ways, to get involved in certain movements in your local area, to talk about it, to contribute to people who are doing good work. Sometimes people call me and they've told me in the past, for example, people have used my photographs for calendars or anything else, and they
Hmm.
always ask me, how do we? I say just contribute to so and so NGO who's doing this
Okay.
work. You don't give it. I don't require. I mean, I enjoy doing it. So in your own line of work, you could do pro bono work or contribute NGO, genuine NGOs who are doing
Hmm.
good. That's very important to identify them. So fortunately, at least in the people in my life, I am there. So I tell them this group is doing good work, or you can do. So that's one aspect. I remember the lockdown, we would contribute. Sometimes people contributed to giving food, and people contribute to giving clothes and boots and raincoats to forest department personnel, to guards. So in your own sphere, whatever comes to your mind, one can do it. Yeah.
Okay. And so obviously like a lot of the stuff you spoke about is like intentional and like donating and all of that, like you are actually taking a step. But when you see things that like people don't do, and like people as in large volumes like don't do what seems like the bare minimum, like not littering and stuff like that, like does that ever make you like think about your own work, like what's the point if like people at such masses can't do the bare minimum? Like, how am I supposed to change this mentality?
See, you have to do what my duty is to spread awareness. As you say, I think I utilize that line from the Bhagavad Gita where you do what you need to do. That's your dharma, right? Dharma, as you said. You do your dharma. So I do my duty at whatever point it can sensitize people. If I can, in whatever way I can, it will happen. Like at least in the areas where I live in Bombay, uh, a lot of sensitization has taken place to a great extent. With a lot of people, I'm mostly out now, but now people are doing it. So I play my role when I go to the forest. When I'm shooting in the jungle, I see kids, I see people talking loudly, and it's okay. I don't want to be holier than thou to anybody. I'm not holier than thou at all. It's okay. People will come, they will gradually get sensitized. That same kid who's screaming and shouting in that Jeep will probably one day come with a camera because of being sensitized. It's a big favor their parents are doing that by bringing them out into the open. So
Hmm.
I'm not idealistic in my approach. I just let things play out at its own time. See, there's something called collective consciousness. So
Hmm.
see, we also come from a nation where we have tremendous amount of wildlife. You see, 17% of the human population is crammed in 2%, but still we have so much wildlife. So it speaks volumes for the kind of people we are. So I respect that intrinsic values we all have. So and see, Indians, I mean, we generally are a little loud. So in fact, I'll have my conversation when I'm shooting. I'll tell people, "Arey, मेरे camera में tiger दिख रहा है, आप आके देखो." Because very often we have the telephotos and things like that. Yeah. So
Hmm.
that does not discourage me. I continue. It's the duty. It's my purpose. We keep making films of it. Whatever films we make it, sometimes for broadcast or we put it for YouTube. We keep making it. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually love that point, like letting people learn at their own like time and will, because like if you force somebody to do something, it may not be firstly genuine or long term. Actually, yeah, I like that point a lot. And yeah, this conversation overall has been super insightful. I just want to know what's next for you, any dream project or any just like dream in general relating to Brave Age.
See, I live on a day-to-day basis in the moment because
Hmm.
I've been connected with nature for so long. You're just used to living on a day-to-day basis. Though definitely, I feel what is that word you use? Is when you manifest, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I definitely think manifestation to some extent works, at least on the field when we are there. But when it comes to manifesting goals for the company or for my own self, I think I'm too busy in the technical process and enjoying the everyday basis. And the projects are lined up. The projects someone called out to me. I didn't expect the wetland. You asked me the question about wetlands, a film on wetlands. I didn't visualize and plan that I'll make a film on wetlands. It just so happened that I was so much in the field filming flamingos and in all the mangroves filming rare. And because anyhow I was making films on tigers and elephants, wetland just happened. The Emerald Forest Panna film happened. I was telling you my process. Uh, that happened because I remember Sanctuary Asia had a screening of Bastion of the Giants at Opera House. And that same evening, I had left for Panna. And when I went to Panna, it suddenly clicked that 2009 paper cutting and seeing beautiful Panna. And I
Hmm.
knew that because the tigers are not so readily seen in this was about 2017. Maybe I'll not have a commercially viable or accepted film because tigers definitely do well. But I said I'll make the Panna film for my own sake, for to capture this beauty. That was that small goal which happened that time. It's a different thing when we started filming, the tigers started coming out, leopards
Hmm.
started coming, we got shots. Very often the project calls out to you, and then even Tadoba, what we were working on. Initially, wanted to go and film this tiger called Jay, who had come into Umred Karhandla, but by the time we reached Umred Karhandla, that Jay was not seen anymore. So from there, then we proceeded to Tadoba and Maya and Matkasur, the two very famous tigers now, gave us some great shots. That's how the Tadoba project, in a way, started, and that has been a 7, 8, 9 year process. But that is, and going forward, we generally I like to generally stay in the genre or the forest where I'm already working because that's I've already got a lot of insight there. And
Hmm.
plus, as I told you, a very important aspect of our filming is to the locals are like our family, extended family. So
Hmm.
it's like going back home. If I leave my home in my city and I go to the forest, it's like I go back home. It's you feel you're meeting your brother, your sister, whatever, your family members. So my project generally take that trajectory. We'll continue saying, and also tigers also you see them maturing, you see them growing, their families growing, their cubs becoming older, branching out. interpersonal conflicts. So that fits in well with my research, the research mind I have. So for Brave Age, I would think that is the vision I have. Definitely, we want to also look at being more commercial. There's no doubt about it. At least for the sake of our teams on the ground, because they're also so involved in it. So they definitely so that's one aspect. So, but the commercial world is changing too fast. Broadcast is changing too fast.
Hmm.
Companies are changing hands, whether you have an Nat Geo or a Discovery. So there's a lot of churning happening there also. So as and when we like our films, Emerald went into Discovery after a year of being released. Bastion went into Discovery after maybe 4 years. Went to Amazon Prime before that. So we keep understanding the strategy. That's also an aspect of being in touch with the international broadcasters to understand, which direction we can take our company. So our direction is pretty clear now. We are making our films and we are bouncing it off our distributors and broadcasters. And as long as the essence of what I want to say and what I want to make is maintained, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for coming on once again. I really enjoyed this conversation and I hope you did too. And I learned about like so much I didn't even think of before, like even when preparing for this podcast, which is always good. So yeah, thank you so much once again.
Pleasure is mine, Rahil, completely. Thank you so much. And wishing you all the best to your generation. And as I say, brave age.
Yeah.
Thinking out of the box, coming out of like I can coming out of the box of wanting to fit in, a peer-based fitting in, or what social media or what influencers are telling you, coming out of that, being brave, coming out of that comfort zone, whether it's in the way you look, your hairstyle, whatever it could be, and projecting your individuality. And I
Hmm.
can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing. The more you project your individuality, there's a direct link with your connection with nature also, I feel, because that's inherently we have come from mother nature. That's an important aspect.
Hmm.
Remove all the filters. Yeah, yeah, I think I would like to tell you that. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's amazing to end on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
That's a wrap on The Ones Who Do. For fun clips, for behind the scenes, and for major updates, you can follow us on Instagram at The Ones Who Do Podcast. And for our full length episodes, you can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts by just searching up The Ones Who Do by Rahul Joshi. And yeah, see you soon.